August 1944, Yugoslavia. Claire Musgrove trudged into yet another dusty village, his boots heavy from days of endless walking. The stone houses looked the same as all the others, simple, worn, filled with the thick scent of smoke and hay. He and the other American airmen followed their armed escorts inside one home, unsure what awaited them. For 4 days they had been passed from village to village, surviving on scraps of goat cheese and stale bread. Musgrove's stomach growled, but he knew better than to complain. These locals had already risked everything to hide them from German patrols. He had bailed out of his B-24 bomber over northern Yugoslavia after a raid on the Plesti oil fields in Romania, a vital target that fueled the German war machine. The mission was his 8th, and it nearly became his last. Separated from his crew, Musgrove landed alone, his parachute barely clearing the rugged mountains. Now, in this strange land occupied by Nazis since 1941, he wondered if anyone back at base even knew he was alive. As they sat at a rough wooden table, a sturdy woman served what little food she had. Then a man entered, speaking English, the first they had heard. "You are American?" he asked. Thrilled, they nodded. He was the village school principal, his English basic but clear. "You go to place with more Americans. They help you." Musgrove's heart raced. There was a plan. After more walking, they reached Pranjani, where a burly man on horseback greeted them. "Hi, boys. Welcome to Pranjani. It was George Mussolini, an OSS agent dropped behind enemy lines. We're going to get you out. C-47s will land here. We've got over 200 airmen already and more coming." Back in Bari, Italy, OSS officer George Vujnovic paced his office, haunted by his own escape from Yugoslavia years earlier. He knew the terror of hiding from Nazis in those hills. The British opposed the plan, calling it too risky, but Vujnovic was determined. With German troops everywhere, building an airstrip in secret seemed impossible. Yet as reports of more stranded airmen poured in, he vowed, "We'll make it work. We'll get them out." July 28, 1944, over Yugoslavia. Claire Musgrove gripped the handles in his ball turret, the plexiglass bubble shaking as flak exploded around the B-24. The plane rattled like a tin can in a storm, black puffs blooming in the sky. "Engine 2's losing power!" the co-pilot shouted over the intercom. Musgrove's heart pounded as the bomber dropped from formation, limping on 2 engines. Alone now, vulnerable to fighters lurking below. The pilot's voice crackled. "We're not making it back. Abandon ship!" Musgrove hit the switch to raise the turret. Nothing. Panic surged. He cranked the backup handle furiously, sweat stinging his eyes, the ground rushing up. Finally, he scrambled out, snatched his chute, and rolled through the side door into the void. The ripcord failed at first. He clawed the silk free, the canopy snapping open just in time. Musgrove was one of many. These raids on Plesti's oil fields, vital to the German war machine, turned the skies into a graveyard. Bombers flew from Italy across the Adriatic, dodging defences that shredded wings and crews. By 1944, hundreds parachuted into enemy territory, their planes crippled by anti-aircraft fire or Messerschmitt attacks. Tony Orsini, on his first mission, felt the blast rock his B-24. "Abandon ship!" Engines dead, he jumped, the silence eerie after the roar. Robert Wilson watched gasoline flood the fuselage, fearing a spark would end them all. They heaved guns overboard, but the plane dove. "Bail out!" Wilson yanked Norton's shrapnel free before leaping. Mike McCool's B-24 took hits from fighters, engines flaming. Thomas Oliver's borrowed plane seized up mid-flight. Richard Fellman evaded Messerschmitts, only to bail into uncertainty. Each man tumbled earthward, chutes blooming like white flowers against the blue, wondering if the ground held friends or foes. In those heart-stopping moments, industrial might clashed with desperate survival, turning routine runs into tales of raw courage. In the rolling hills of Yugoslavia, white parachutes dotted the sky like falling snow. Serbian villagers paused their daily labours, shielding their eyes against the sun to count each one. 10 from that plane, a farmer muttered, his calloused hands gripping a wooden staff. They knew every canopy meant an American airman tumbling into danger, and they had to act fast before German patrols swept the area. For Tony Orsini, the descent felt endless. His B-24 shredded over Ploesti, He yanked his ripcord too soon, vomiting in the silent air. Below, a heavy-set woman in a long dress raced across the fields. Orsini crashed into a tree, breaking his clavicle, blacking out. He awoke cradled in her arms, her soothing words foreign but kind. She wiped his face, hugged him tight, then led him to her village where residents poured out, offering water, bread, and goat's milk on a red carpet. Robert Wilson, after pulling shrapnel from a crewmate's head amid gasoline fumes, floated down in eerie quiet. His plane and another crashed into mountains, but villagers below tallied the chutes. One group found him dazed, wrapping him in blankets and guiding him to safety, their wary eyes scanning for Nazis. These peasants, loyal to Draza Mihailovich, risked everything. In Pranjani and surrounding hamlets, they hid airmen in haylofts and cellars, sharing scarce food. Amerikansky, they'd ask, embracing the strangers with bear hugs, but caution ruled. They sent scouts only if the numbers matched, avoiding traps. German reprisals loomed, yet their code demanded aid. Claire Musgrove, dangling from a tree, hid his chute and approached sheep herders. 2 women and boys stared, then shared smiles over hard candy. They led him home, defying a neighbour's warnings. That night, as a German officer searched, Musgrove held his breath under the bed. The villagers' silence saved him, proving their quiet defiance turned the tide for hundreds lost in enemy land. Claire Musgrove dangled from the tree, heart racing as he climbed down and hid his chute. Alone in the Yugoslav hills, he prayed for guidance. Spotting sheep, he approached 2 women and boys, offering hard candy from his pocket. They smiled, saying Yugoslavian, and let him sit nearby. As evening fell, they motioned him to follow to their village. Inside a stone home, a burly man shook his hand firmly. Dinner was mutton and bread, shared in silence. Suddenly, a knock, arguing voices. The man pulled Musgrove to hide under the bed. A German officer's boots stomped in, pausing inches away. Musgrove held his breath, sweat beading. The boots left. Relief washed over him. These strangers had protected him. Tony Orsini crashed into a tree, clavicle snapping. He awoke in a woman's embrace, her soothing words calming him. She led him to her village, where residents rolled out a red carpet, offering milk and bread. "Amerikansky!" they cheered, hugging him tight. At the Chetnik camp, bearded fighters did the same, one even giving him a photo. "Remember your days in Ravna Gora?" Robert Wilson landed hard, spotting a rugged man approaching. "Amerikansky or Inglés?" the man yelled. "American," Wilson replied. A bear hug followed, then rakia from a cask, strong brandy that burned but eased his nerves. Led to a supply building, he reunited with crewmates. Mike McCool hid in a hole as villagers charged with pitchforks. Instead of harm, they embraced him, kissing his cheeks. 2 armed men arrived, bundling his chute and rushing him through woods, evading German shots. Thomas Oliver drifted onto a family's picnic, sheephead staring up. They caught him, offering wine and eyeballs. He declined politely. Soon, riflemen arrived, mentioning Draza Mihailovich, and led him away on horseback. In these tense moments, uncertainty faded. Bear hugs and shared meals built fragile trust, turning strangers into guardians amid the shadows of occupation. The Yugoslav hills stretched endlessly, a maze of rocky paths and hidden valleys, where American airmen trudged onward, their boots worn thin and spirits tested. Survival meant moving, always moving, from one village to the next, guided by Chetnik fighters who knew every shadow. Robert Wilson, after linking up with his crew at a remote outpost, realized sticking with these armed men was his only shot. For 2 months, they hiked narrow trails, dodging German patrols by diving into bushes or vanishing into the night. Villagers welcomed them like heroes, sharing scraps of bread and goat cheese, but the escorts kept them on the go to avoid draining anyone home. Wilson met Bogdan, an English-speaking retiree from Indiana's steel mills who joined as interpreter. "We'll take you place to place," Bogdan said, "but where it ends, I don't know." They foraged berries, seened tiny fish from streams, and fried them in borrowed pans, always grateful for the warmth. Claire Musgrove's path mirrored the hardship. From his tree landing he was passed village to village, enduring endless walks fueled by plum brandy and hope. Mike McCool rode horseback with a brigade of 800 nicknamed Tom Mix by their commander. Skirmishes flared, but the real wonder was the locals lining paths, kissing hands and offering milk, seeing their lost sons in these Yanks. Thomas Oliver's trek mixed revelry and fear. Escorted on horseback, he sipped brandy at cafes, laughing at Chetnik's knife gestures for enemy leaders. A midnight raid sent him fleeing into woods, heart pounding. Richard Fellman learned Serbian, sabotaged trains with hidden explosives, and once drank with a German officer in disguise, seething inside. Close calls defined the journey, naked swims interrupted by foes, ultimatums leading to razed villages. Yet bonds formed, turning strangers into guardians. Finally, groups converged on Pranjani, Mihailovich's mountain haven, where hundreds waited, wondering if home was just another distant dream. The airmen huddled in Pranjane's hills, days turning to weeks with no sign of rescue. German patrols lurked nearby, and every rustle in the bushes could mean capture. Mihailovich's men guarded them fiercely, but the strain showed. Rations dwindled, morale dipped. Mihailovich radioed details of each man to Cairo, then Washington, pleading for evacuation. "More than 100 Americans here," one message read. "English promised help, but nothing. Better if Americans handle it, not British." In 1943, small rescues had succeeded. OSS agents slipped in, handing escape maps to airmen and posters to villagers showing Allied insignia. With Chetniks and partisans cooperating then, planes taxied on makeshift fields, whisking away about 100 flyers. One starving tail gunner was found fighting pigs for scraps. 2 pilots hid in a convent, betrayed by their boots peeking from nuns' habits. These efforts worked amid dangers, Nazis executing helpers, airmen dodging searches. But in 1944, silence from Allies. Families got missing in action telegrams, igniting worry. Mihailovich's pleas fell flat. War Department filed reports but planned nothing. Dangers mounted. Airmen like Orsini feared betrayal. Wilson heard gunfire echoing. One group tried trekking to the coast, only to turn back from enemy lines. George Vujnovic, OSS in Bari, learned via his wife Majana's letter from Washington. Yugoslav expatriates buzzed about the stranded men. Haunted by his own 1941 escape, bombings in Belgrade, fleeing with Majana amid chaos, he vowed action. Dodging bombs, racing through debris-strewn streets, he knew Yugoslavia's perils, strafing planes, collapsing buildings, constant terror. "We've got to get them out," he thought, his past fueling resolve despite British opposition and red tape. Failures piled up, but Vujnovic's drive sparked hope amid the shadows. George Vujnovic kissed Majana goodbye in the monastery garden, his heart heavy. "We'll get married someday," he said, but the war loomed like a storm. Italy's fighters had sunk their escape boat, leaving them stranded in Herceg Novi. George hiked back alone, pondering their future apart. In Sarajevo, a lost passport nearly doomed him. An Ustash guard threatened arrest, but friends vouched, buying time. The chauffeur returned it next morning, a miracle. Reunited in Belgrade, they faced curfews and reprisals. Fires sparked executions. 100 Serbs for a German life. George telegraphed Majana, "Marry me. Documents await." She arrived amid chaos, their wedding secret at dawn, witnessed by a cousin and friend. The consul's affidavit declared her his wife, but Germans banned foreign marriages. Evacuating via Danube to Budapest, Majana's papers held. In Hungary, Gestapo hunted Yugoslavs with Allied ties. George changed money. An old man suggested flying to Bulgaria. Lufthansa had 1 seat daily, but a call offered 2. Aboard, Majana sat beside Magda Goebbels, pale with fear. "It's her," she whispered. In Belgrade, the officer demanded passports. Magda snapped, "Help this sick woman." They passed unchecked. In Sofia, Nazis shouted, "Heil Hitler." They traded money, crossed a minefield to Turkey for $25. "Welcome," the guard said. Safe at last, but hurdles taught George the power of papers and persistence. Draza Mihailovich stood tall in the rugged hills of Ravnogora, his blue eyes sharp behind horn-rimmed glasses, beard thick like the peasants he led. Born into a world of conflict, he had fought in World War I, rising to colonel in the Yugoslav army. Known as a man of the people, he dined on the ground with soldiers, carried his own knapsack on marches and listened to villagers' woes. His integrity shone bright. Dignified, controlled, always putting country first. When Nazis invaded Yugoslavia in April 1941, Mihailovich refused surrender. Leading 7 officers and 24 men to the mountains, he formed the Yugoslav Army of the Homeland. His goal: gather forces quietly, avoid needless deaths, and strike when Allies landed. He saved lives by shunning premature sabotage, knowing German reprisals could wipe out villages. Yet, he risked all to protect downed airmen, seeing them as brothers in the fight. The West hailed him a hero. Time magazine's cover in 1942 showed his dramatic portrait, calling him Europe's greatest guerrilla. Readers voted him Man of the Year. Stories painted him as intellectual yet fierce, a strategist who outfoxed foes. Allied leaders praised his loyalty. He pledged full support against Germans and communists alike. But rivals loomed. Tito's partisans, pushing Soviet ideals, clashed with his vision. Mihailovich opposed Tito's reckless attacks, which sparked brutal German massacres, like thousands in Kraljevo and Kragujevac. Reports detailed Tito forcing civilians to flee, abandoning them to die in snow. Mihailovich's heart ached. He fought for Yugoslavia's soul, not destruction. As Minister of War in the exile government, he became Deputy Commander-in-Chief. His forces grew, sabotaging subtly, delayed actions to minimize reprisals. To airmen like Fellman and Orsini he was a savior, commanding respect from bearded fighters who shared bread and brandy. In those hills, Mihailovich embodied defiance, a beacon amid occupation's darkness. In the misty hills of Ravna-Gora, Draza Mihailovich gathered his loyal fighters, his blue eyes scanning the horizon for threats. From the start, he and Tito clashed like thunderclouds, neither willing to bend. Mihailovich dreamed of restoring the kingdom, while Tito pushed for a red dawn. They fought the Germans separately, but Tito struck first in November 1941, turning brother against brother amid the occupation's grip. The British, once Mihailovich's staunch backers, grew uneasy. Captain Dwayne Hudson parachuted in, trekking between camps. His reports whispered of deals with Italians in Montenegro, accommodations to survive, not betrayals. Mihailovich evaded German hunts, his men dodging Operation Mihailovich and bounties of gold marks. Telegrams flew, Mihailovich rejecting Axis offers, suspicious of communist plots to smear him. Frustration boiled. British demands for sabotage clashed with Mihailovich's caution, sparing villages from reprisals. In February 1943, his fiery speech to supporters lashed out. "The English fight to the last Serb," Churchill thundered back, warning of severed ties. Mihailovich affirmed loyalty. "My only enemy is the Axis." But damage lingered. By spring, British eyes turned to Tito's bold strikes. At Tehran in December 1943, Churchill swayed Roosevelt and Stalin. Drop Mihailovich, back Tito. Allies cut supplies. BBC broadcasts praised partisans, ignoring Chetnik feats. In Bari, George Vujnovich sensed the shift. OSS agents like George Musulin reporting British obstruction, delayed drops, twisted intel. Decades later, truth emerged. James Klugman, Soviet mole in SOE, falsified reports from Bari. Linked to Cambridge spies, Philby, Burgess, Blunt. He exalted Tito, buried Mihailovich's deeds. His whispers sealed the betrayal, handing Yugoslavia to Moscow's shadow. Yet Mihailovich stood firm, sheltering American airmen. Abandoned by allies, he guarded them like sons, his defiance a quiet roar against the gathering storm. George Musulin stormed off the plane in Bari, his massive frame shaking with fury. Just days ago, he had been in the Yugoslav mountains, sharing bread with Mihailovich's loyal fighters. Now, in May 1944, he faced OSS colleagues spouting lies about collaboration. "You think I risked my life for nothing?" he bellowed, slamming his fist on a desk. He had evacuated 40 airmen, stalling to save more, but Churchill's orders pulled him out. In headquarters, he raged against the British for ignoring his reports and complaining about evacuating Mihailovich's aides. Vujnovich listened intently. Musulin confirmed over 100 airmen hid in Pranjane, mostly Americans, some British, French, Russians, Italians. Vujnovich, haunted by Yugoslavia's chaos, knew politics blocked rescue. The Allies labelled Mihailovich a Nazi collaborator, funneling aid to Tito. British SOE, fed false intel by spy James Klugman, opposed any contact. Pro-communists in OSS harassed Vujnovich, filing baseless complaints during his Brindisi stint. The OSS buzzed with odd recruits. blue bloods like Vanderbilts, wrestlers like Joe Savoldi, even Julia Child as a clerk. Donovan's pragmatic eye tolerated communists if they fought Nazis. But tensions simmered, FBI clashed over turf, State Department feared OSS freelancing. Agents like Mussolini despised bourbon whiskey colonels issuing orders from safety. Vujnovic pushed plans upward. On July 4th, Donovan wrote Roosevelt, framing rescue as intelligence need. In person, Donovan cut through. "Screw the British. Let's get our boys out." Roosevelt agreed. On July 14th, General Ira Eaker formed the Aircrew Rescue Unit with B-25s, led by Colonel George Crayer. Despite British protests, OSS determination prevailed. The risky mission could proceed, blending rescue with re-establishing presence amid betrayal's shadows. In the shadowed hills around Pranjane, the American airmen huddled in haylofts and stone huts, their days a grind of hunger and watchfulness. Goat's milk, warm and thin, washed down chunks of hay bread. Dense loaves stretched with dried grass to make flour last. It filled the belly but churned the gut, leaving men like Claire Musgrove doubled over with cramps. "Better than starving," he'd mutter, sharing a weak smile with villagers who slipped them portions from their own meagre stores. These Serbs, simple farmers under Mihailovich's banner, risked everything. A woman named Milka would sneak eggs at dawn, her eyes fierce with quiet defiance. "Amerikansky good," she'd whisper, pressing food into hands blistered from hiding. Bonds formed over shared fires, airmen teaching card games, locals singing old folk tunes. Tony Orsini learned phrases in Serbian, trading cigarettes for stories of lost sons in the war, but danger lurked. German patrols rumbled nearby, forcing quick dives into ditches or cellars thick with mould. Farther out, agents like Arthur Jibilian knew the hardship firsthand. On his prior mission with Popovich and Farish, they fled through snow, clothes freezing to skin, surviving on hay bread and pears from sympathetic peasants. Diarrhea plagued them, but villagers offered shelter, hiding them in barns amid goat bleats. "They treated us like kin," Jibilian recalled, his team bonding with partisans over bribes and narrow escapes at checkpoints. In Pranjane, the growing crowd of airmen, over 100 now, faced boredom's bite. They mended clothes, swapped tales, and helped with chores, forging ties that transcended words. A boy named Dragan fetched water, earning chocolate rations. Yet fear gnawed. One raid could end it all. As weeks dragged, hope flickered in villagers' eyes, their sacrifices weaving unbreakable threads of loyalty amid the daily toil. Back in Bari, Vujnovic assembled his team, Mussolini, Rajacic, Jibilian, knowing these bonds would be key to survival. In the dim offices of Bari, George Vujnovic laid out the daring blueprint for Operation Halyard. His chosen men, George Mussolini, Nick Rajacic, and Arthur Jibilian, listened intently, their faces etched with resolve. Parachute into Nazi-held Yugoslavia, rally Mihailovic's forces, build a secret airstrip and evacuate hundreds of stranded airmen. The risks loomed like shadows, but none flinched. Their only question cut sharp. Are we going in alone, or with the British? Vujnovic sighed. Joint Ops demanded British involvement, planes, radios, even jumpmasters. The Brits, bitter over Roosevelt's approval, dragged their feet, but agreements bound them. The team got stern orders, rescue only, no political promises or aid deals. Mussolini, fresh from prior missions, seethed at the betrayal of Mihailovich but focused on the task. Preparation hummed with urgency. They packed gear, radios, codes, supplies, and rehearsed signals. Jibilian, the wiry radio man, tested frequencies. Rajacic, the medic, stocked bandages. Mussolini, the burly leader, mapped routes. Eager, they boarded a Black C-47 on July 19th, hearts pounding as Brindisi faded below. But the first drop aborted, no ground signals. Mussolini fumed, coordinates were wrong. Next attempt, storms forced turnaround, then flak shredded the sky. Suspicion grew. On the 4th, Mussolini spotted a partisan aboard, Tito's red star gleaming. "No communist pushes us out," he roared. Wrong coordinates again, partisan turf. The 5th sealed it. Green light flashed, Mussolini braced at the door. Below, muzzle flashes lit a raging battle. "They're dropping us into hell," he bellowed, shoving back. Brits sabotaging? Klugman's influence reeked of communist meddling. Back in Bari, Mussolini stormed Vujnovic's desk. "American plane crew everything, or forget it!" Vujnovic nodded, cutting British ties. The all-American team reformed, steeling for the leap that would defy odds and allies alike. In the hidden meadows of Pranjane, the American airmen gathered around a salvaged radio, its wires patched together like fragile hope. Weeks had dragged on, food dwindling to scraps of bread and milk, wounds festering without medicine. Richard Fellman paced the dirt floor, his face gaunt. He had seen Germans torch a village for sheltering them, women and children fleeing flames. "We can't just wait," he said to the officers. "They'll find us eventually." The group nodded. Mihailovich's men guarded them, but German patrols edged closer. Fellman eyed the radio. Broadcasting could pinpoint their spot, inviting bombers or worse, but silence meant death too. They agreed, send a plea. Thomas Oliver, picnic parachuter, helped craft the message. At the table, the operator tapped Morse code, fingers trembling. Dozens watched, breath held. SOS. SOS. 150 members of American crew have been waiting for rescue. There are many sick and wounded. Call back. SOS. SOS. Silence followed. Hours stretched. Men drifted away, dejected. Days later, no reply. "Maybe it's a trap," someone whispered. They refined codes, slang and secrets only Barry would know. Mudcat driver to COAPO 520. 150 Yanks are in Yugo, some sick. Shooters work horses. Oliver added challenges. Bombardier's birth letter, banana nose's scarf colour. Serial numbers hide coordinates. Signed TKO, Flat Rat 4 in lug order. Must refer to Shark Squadron 459th Bomb Group for decoding. In Barry, the message crackled in. Officers decoded, eyes widening. "That's Oliver's crew!" Major Christie shouted. It sparked urgency. Vujnovich's team felt the gut punch. "There are many sick and wounded. Call back. SOS. Meanwhile, young Nick Petrovich patrolled, rifle ready. He ambushed Nazis with salvaged 50s, defending the airmen like kin. His grandfather's war tales fueled him, stealing guns, dodging Gestapo. One beating left scars, but he pressed on. As signals flew, desperation peaked, bonds with villagers deepening amid the weight. July 31st, 1944, Pranjane. The airmen scanned the starry sky, hearts pounding with fragile hope. Fellman gripped the red lens flashlight, ready to signal. All night they waited in the field, ears straining for engines. Dawn broke without a sign, crushing spirits. "They're not coming," someone muttered, despair thick in the air. Unbeknownst to them, weather had grounded the mission miles away. In Bari, the SOS plea electrified Vujnovich's team. Many sick and wounded. Call back. SOS. Jibilian felt the urgency grip him. Numbers had swelled to 150, but they pressed on. August 2nd, clear skies, Mussolin, Rajasic. Jibilian boarded the C-47 double-checking gear. No Brits this time, just Americans. The plane droned over Yugoslavia. At 800 feet, the jumpmaster shouted, "Go!" Mussolin hurtled first, ripping through air like a boulder. He smashed a chicken coop, feathers exploding. Rajasic tangled in a tree. Jibilian hit cornstalks softly. A peasant woman rushed up, kissing cheeks wildly. "Liberators!" she cried, mistaking them for invaders. Mussolin paid for the coup, then led them onward. Bearded Chetniks emerged, yelling "Captain George." Their hugs and tears followed. Mussolin's return sparked joy. Fellman watched villagers swarm, then shook Mussolin's hand. "I'm George Mussolin." Celebration erupted. Plum brandy, songs, Mihailovich's visit. The general, warm and paternal, chatted humbly, teasing children as Chicha. Numbers shocked them. 250 airmen more arriving. Mussolin scouted Germans. Garrisons nearby, Luftwaffe close. "Build an airstrip fast," he urged. Airmen set up hospital with dropped supplies. An escaped Italian doctor aiding wounded. Jibilian radioed Bari. Safe arrival, proceeding. Skepticism lingered. This rugged plateau for C-47s? But resolve hardened. Mussolin eyed the site. Narrow, treacherous, no better options. As work began, he knew time was enemy. Germans could strike any time. August 9th, 1944, Pranjane. Jibilian hunched over his radio, tapping Morse code to Barry for 6 planes that night. Confirmation crackled back, igniting a wildfire of whispers among the airmen. Sleep evaded them like a distant dream. Orsini and Musgrove paced under stars, hearts pounding with hope and dread. This wild plan hinged on a bumpy field scraped from mountain dirt. Dawn broke with urgency. Mussolini, on horseback, scanned the plateau as hundreds laboured, airmen and villagers hauling carts, chopping roots, filling craters. Orsini wiped sweat, smoothing soil with bare hands. "This has to work," he muttered. Radjacic treated wounds in a makeshift clinic while Jibilian tested signals. Tension spiked when machine gun fire shattered the night before. A Chetnik mistook a cow for foes. Laughter mixed with relief, but Mussolini's jaw tightened. "Close call," he said. Daylight brought peril. Tiny specks grew into German planes, a Stuka and 2 Junkers. "Run!" Mussolini bellowed. They dove into trees, breaths held as engines roared overhead. Miraculously, a herd of cows wandered onto the strip, masking it as pasture. The planes droned away, but Mussolini suspected reconnaissance. They might hit tonight, he warned, yet pressed on. As dusk fell, 72 airmen, wounded first, gathered. Mussolini listed them. 12 per plane, light loads for takeoff, flares ready, oil cans and hay bales. At 10 p.m, engines hummed. Cheers erupted, silenced by Mussolini's orders. Radjacic flashed the Aldi's lamp. Red, red, red. Response blinked back. Chetniks lit flares, runway ablaze. A green flare arced skyward. 4 planes circled, not 6, but hope surged. The lead C-47 aligned, wheels grazing, then throttled up, aborting. Gasps echoed. "Too short," Orsini whispered, despair sinking in. Would any land? The night held its breath. The first C-47 dove steep, wheels slamming the dirt, but throttled up and roared away. Hearts sank in Pranjane. Failure? Then the second aligned, dropping hard on the strip's edge, braking fiercely to halt. Cheers erupted like thunder. Mussolini thought, Babe Ruth just hit a homer. Villagers swarmed, hugging pilots, draping flowers, pressing brandy. Planes taxied tight, wings overlapping by inches. One dented a wing on a haystack. Nick Lalich stepped out, grinning. Vujnovic's surprise help. Amid songs and tears, 72 airmen boarded wounded first. Oliver, codecrafter, climbed aboard, waving farewell. Doors open again, airmen unlaced boots, tossing them to villagers. "Radisa, for you!" Flight jackets, socks followed. Barefoot they flew home, honouring saviours in felt slippers facing winter. Takeoffs gripped everyone. Engines roared, planes rumbled down the bumpy field, noses high. Slowly lifting, they skimmed treetops, wheels brushing leaves. Petrovich, guarding the road with a .50 caliber, watched in awe, like an American movie. 4 planes circled, climbing over mountains. No Germans came. Fighters had pummeled garrisons. Back in Bari, Vujnovic clapped as wheels touched, twining, greeting heroes. Next dawn, engines hummed again. Not scouts, but 6 C-47s escorted by 30 Mustangs and Lightnings. Fighters dove, strafing camps, keeping Nazis pinned. Planes landed with daring ground loops spinning to stop. More airmen loaded. Musgrove, Orsini shivering shoeless. Planes lumbered off, barely clearing woods. By noon, 272 evacuated. Americans, Brits, French, Russians, Italians. No losses. Mussolini retreated to mountains, fearing reprisals, but none came. He returned, evacuating 5 more, then left reluctantly August 26th. Lalich led, coordinating months more. Through snow, rescues continued. 432 Americans, 80 Allies total. Halyard's audacity saved 512, a triumph amid shadows. The C-47 rumbled back to Bari, cold winds slicing through the cabin as Tony Orsini and Claire Musgrove shivered on hard seats. Barefoot after leaving boots for villagers, they clutched blankets, minds racing between joy and fear of German fighters. Landing brought cheers. Vujnovic and General Twining clapping as men stepped out, but orders silenced them. No talking about the rescue. Orsini stared at the KIA list, his name there. "We hoped," a friend said, but the irony stung. Delousing followed, sprays killing fleas from Yugoslav hills, then hot showers shedding beards and grime. Orsini flew more missions, wounded again, sent home early. In Jersey City, he surprised his mother on Beacon Street, her cry, "Il mio Anthony," echoing as they embraced. Musgrove returned to civilian life, but gag orders hid the truth. Airmen whispered in barracks, countering briefings that branded Serbs enemies. Fellman, furious at papers crediting Tito for raids he joined with Chetniks, wrote articles exposing lies. Vujnovic bent rules, sending medicine labelled as food, then 600 shoes on Krager's B-25. Belated Christmas present, he quipped. In Pranjon, villagers split heels to fit, grateful amid snow. Mihailovich evaded Tito's hunters 17 months, carried on stretchers through mountains, refusing exile. Captured in 1946, headlines scream traitor. Jibilian marched to papers, if he's a collaborator, so am I. Fellman rallied hundreds, forming committees, flying to Washington in a DC-3 dubbed Mission to Save Mihailovich. Met by crowds, they lobbied Atchison, entering resolutions demanding fair trial. Tito refused witnesses, staging a Belgrade spectacle. Airmen testified in US commissions, forwarding reports ignored. As gales of politics raged, personal bonds fueled their fight, honouring the man who saved them amid betrayal's storm. In the quiet halls of Washington, Draza Mihailovich's name faded like whispers in the wind after his execution. Headlines moved on, but the airmen and OSS men simmered with fury. Fellman scribbled letters, Musgrove shared tales with friends, yet doors slammed shut. The world branded Mihailovich a collaborator, ignoring his heroism. Unbeknownst to them, top brass pushed back. Eisenhower urged Truman to honour the man who fought valiantly from 1941 to 1944, saving countless lives despite abandonment. In 1948, Truman awarded the Legion of Merit, Chief Commander level, for Mihailovich's resistance and rescues. The citation praised his troops' undaunted efforts under hardship, aiding Allied victory. But State Department suits quashed it. Cables from Rome and Belgrade warned of ruffling Tito's feathers or Italian relations. Keep it secret, they insisted. The medal, violet ribbon and all, vanished into a drawer, stamped classified. For decades no one knew. Airmen like Jibilian and Vujnovic mourned without closure. In 1967, Congressman Derwinski, tipped by rumours, forced disclosure. The truth emerged. Mihailovich was no traitor. Yet the damage lingered. British files in 1997 revealed Klugman's deceit, twisting reports to favour Tito, sealing Mihailovich's fate and bolstering communism. Reagan, in 1979, lamented to California Serbs, Mihailovich's betrayal taught that sacrificing allies for appeasement dooms freedom. Vujnovic, still sharp at 92, fumed over the lies. Fellman rallied till his end, pushing memorials denied by politics. The suppression buried heroes, letting myths thrive. But in private hearts, the truth endured. Mihailovich's sacrifice, the airman's debt, a web of secrets that shadowed victory's glow. Years slipped by like shadows in the hills, but the men of Operation Halyard carried Pranjan's memories deep in their souls. George Vujnovic, sharp at 92, still simmered over Mihailovich's betrayal, his New York apartment echoing with tales of lost allies. He had traded spy games for aircraft parts, building a life with Mirjana until her passing in 2003 after 62 years together. Their daughter Zania thrived in the State Department, a testament to Mirjana's forward spirit. George Masulin, the burly giant who led the drops, faded into bitterness, dying in 1987 at 72, disillusioned by politics that silenced heroes. Nick Lalish turned to advertising, then government work, passing in 2001 at 85. Arthur Jibilian, ever quick-witted, pursued business after college, his Toledo home filled with echoes of radio signals and narrow escapes. Richard Fellman fought hardest, retiring from the Air Force in 1968 to champion Mihailovich. He pushed for statues on Capitol grounds, bills dying in red tape. In 1995, he and Lalić returned to Serbia, greeted by 50,000 cheers on Ravna Gora. Fellman died in 1999 at 78, his voice echoing in unfinished justice. Claire Musgrove farmed Michigan's lands, retiring in 1980, forever grateful to the family that hid him under a bed. Tony Orsini climbed finance ladders in New Jersey, cherishing 7 grandchildren after losing his wife. Robert Wilson engineered engines, then stocks, revisiting Buna in 1966 to find warmth amid communist chill. Young Nick Petrovich built a business in Mexico City, forever America's friend. Tito ruled until 1980, his funeral lauding a unifier who crushed with iron, yet his grip ensured communism's hold. In 2005, survivors gathered in Serbia for VE Day's 50th. Vujnovic, Jubilian, Musgrove presented the long-secret Legion of Merit to Draza Mihailovich. Tears flowed as Gordana kissed her father's photo, whispering to the past. Jubilian choked up meeting Musgrove's grandson. Proof heroes live on in hearts, even if forgotten by the world. Duty's gales may fade, but true sacrifice endures.